I just want to preface this video by saying I made this video back in 2021 for one of my other channels, and since this is a dedicated gaming channel, I thought a remastered version of this video belonged here. I feel like everything I bring up in this video still correlates to today, so without further ado, let's get into this video. MVP Baseball 2004 is the middle child of the MLB MVP Baseball series, coming out on March 9th, 2004. MVP 04 was released on the PS2, OG Xbox, GameCube, and PC. In my mind, MVP 04 will always be the middle ground of greatness. I say that because it is a very solid baseball game, but it just falls a bit short of MVP 05's greatness. There are a few key features missing in MVP 04 that MVP 05 added during its release. Probably the most notable thing that MVP 04 doesn't have is the hitter's eye mechanic. This feature was added in MVP 05 and was used throughout the rest of the franchise run through 2007. With that said, MVP 04 is still a huge step forward compared to MVP 03. MVP 04 is the game that it felt like the developers started to get a real feel what they really wanted to do with the MVP series as a whole, and it truly shows. In this video, we'll be going over the gameplay mechanics of the game, the modes of the game, the graphics of the game, and finally the soundtrack and announcers for MVP 04. With that said, I think it's time to dig into the gameplay mechanics portion of this video. I have said it once and I'll say it again, for the MVP franchise to be so old nowadays, it still has some of the best baseball gameplay mechanics you can find. It is truly amazing that this game is 17 years old because it still plays like a modern baseball game. MVP still provides an experience on the field that is still yet to be duplicated. The utter control you feel over a defender while you're on defense is still awesome to this day. I love how you're able to have full control of what the player does, and doing something like diving doesn't make you feel like you're stuck in the mud, and the players are actually responsive. Diving in an MVP game is still the best I've ever seen in any baseball game. MLB The Show still struggles with infielders diving for balls. Playing balls off the walls or even trying to rob a home run is still better than most of the recent iterations of MLB The Show. I would say the pitching is the thing that has aged the most in this game. Is the pitching bad in this game? No, not by a long shot. In my opinion, the pure analog pitching mechanic that MLB The Show has crafted is the best way to ever pitch in a baseball video game. It just gives you so much more control compared to just clicking a button twice. MVP pitching is just average at best from a modern perspective. Base stealing is so much more intuitive and easier in MVP 04. This is another thing that MVP perfected years ago, but MLB The Show still struggles with mightily to this day. I just love the simplicity of being able to just hit a button on the D-pad to steal with a player. I know it may not sound like much, but it is a big deal when you're actually playing with a friend who's sitting next to you. In MLB The Show, you can tip your hand that you're stealing with a guy when you have a guy on first and third, where in MVP 04, you don't tip your hand at all. I'm not going to get in how this happens in the show, but it does, and I'm sure if you know what I'm talking about, you've experienced these issues. In MVP 2004, you can even break up a double play or take out a catcher at home plate. I know this has pretty much been taken out of modern baseball, but damn is it fun to see this again in a video game. Hitting in this game is still a lot of fun. Way more arcadey compared to MLB The Show, but that is what makes this so much more fun. No, there is no hitter's eye mechanic in MVP 04, which does make the hitting a tad bit more difficult, but you can still have a blast once you get the timing down. The pitch to hit timing in this game and all MVP games is really quick, and you have to be ready to pull the trigger almost instantly, but once you get it down, it feels normal again. MVP also has the ability to go for a home run, a line drive, or a grounder, depending on what you do with the left analog stick and where you point it. I guess you could say it's similar to the contact, power, and normal swing mechanic in MLB The Show. Overall, there is no doubt in my mind that MVP 04 still has some of the best gameplay you can find when it comes to the core gameplay mechanics of a baseball game. MVP 2004 doesn't feature as many game modes as MVP 2005, but it does add some very in-depth features for the time. This is the first Major League Baseball game to feature real minor league teams for the AA and AAA levels. This is a huge addition for fans who like to play Dynasty mode and build out their teams over many decades. The game also has a home run derby and pitching showdown, but I've never really found them too interesting. Legendary players and classic stadiums are even in this game. I believe this was the first MVP to have legendary players and stadiums, and I really think this adds to the lore and replayability of this game and the MVP franchise as a whole. I also like how you can unlock these players, stadiums, and retro uniforms just from actually playing the game. It is not done through microtransactions and a Diamond Dynasty virtual card collecting mode. The biggest thing for me is the classic stadiums. It is a thing I have been harping over forever when it comes to MLB The Show and their lack of classic stadiums in that game. How can a game that is 17 years old have more classic ballparks than the most recent baseball game? It just makes no sense to me at all. This game also features features a normal play now mode, exhibition mode, where you can play as normal teams from 2004. There's also a dynasty mode I referenced earlier. You can draft and build your team and become the best you can be. A fun little tidbit, this is actually the last game to feature the Montreal Expos as a normal team, along with Olympic Stadium. As most of you know, the next year in 2005, the Expos became the Washington Nationals. Overall, MVP 2004 doesn't have too many modes to write home about, but what it does is very solid and creates a lot of replayability for longtime players of this game. Graphically speaking, yes, this game has aged quite a bit, but it really isn't that bad once you start getting used to it. It is honestly unfair to compare this game's graphics to a modern sports game because how far graphics have come over the last 17 years, but there are a few positive standouts. First off, the stadiums in this game still look really good for this era, and it still feels like you're at a real ballpark. There are even details to certain ballparks that the game gets right, and on that front, it still looks pretty good. Some player models even look pretty good for the time too. You can at least tell who the players are the majority of the time. There is of course going to be some clunkiness in this game when it comes to the graphics, but even looking at this game with 2021 eyes, it's really not that bad. Overall, yes, the graphics have aged, but it is still more than playable and you still can enjoy it even if the graphics aren't up to modern standards. MVP 04 is graced with the presence of Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper, and my goodness, is it a goldmine of one-liners and just overall great commentary.
Pitcher said, "Come and get it, big boy."
Some of the lines can get repetitive at times, but is so much better than what MLB The Show offers. Out of all my years of playing the MVP games, I've never once turned off Kruk and Kuip, but I turn off the announcers within the first week of getting any new MLB The Show game every single year. MVP 04 also has a really good soundtrack that is definitely a reflection of its era, but it still rocks in my opinion. I'm sure others might feel differently, but I am still a huge fan of early 2000s rock, and it just fits the game so perfectly. The most popular song in this game is probably Come On Come On by the Von Bondies. Overall, there is no doubt in my mind that Kruk and Kuip are still great in this game to this day, along with the soundtrack that seems to capture 2004 ever so perfectly. To try and wrap this whole video up, MVP Baseball 2004 is still a classic in my book. It still doesn't beat out MVP 2005 for me, but I totally understand people who pick this as their favorite baseball game. It is definitely one of the best that you can play still to this day. This game still has such a great core when it comes to gameplay mechanics, along with in-depth features, passable graphics even to a modern eye, and some of the best baseball announcing and songs you can find in any sports video game. So with all this said, what are your thoughts on MVP 2004? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.